If you're here, then it means you're struggling with JavaScript, specifically with how to build your own JavaScript projects. But that is okay. There's so much outdated, bad information, misinformation on the web, specifically when it comes to JavaScript with how quickly that is changing, that it makes sense that you'd be struggling because there's so much bad information being thrown at you, and sifting through it is incredibly difficult. I mean, I guarantee within just the last couple days, you've probably ran into some terrible JavaScript information that either confused you or led you down the wrong path. I know that I ran into that all the time when I was learning. So, before we jump into the rest of this live stream where I talk about exactly the techniques that I use to learn JavaScript, I want to talk about who this live stream is for so you make sure that you're in the right place. This is going to be for two types of people. The first is going to be your absolute beginner, someone that's never even touched JavaScript before, has very little JavaScript experience. You're going to get a ton out of this because I'm going to show you the path you need to take to optimize your JavaScript learning. If you already know a little bit of JavaScript though, maybe you have quite a bit of experience with JavaScript, but you're still struggling to build projects on your own and you just don't know where to get started with that kind of stuff, this is also perfect for you because I'm going to lay out the blueprint I used in order to go from where you are right now to where I am right now. If on the other hand though, you're a JavaScript expert that builds projects completely on your own with no problem, well, I'm sorry, but I have nothing here for you, so you can leave, come back to the next video, it's going to be better, but yeah, this is not for you. But if you fall into one of those first two groups, you're going to love this presentation. So now you're probably wondering, what is that thing that I learned that helped me go from a JavaScript beginner to a JavaScript expert, able to build projects on my own with no problem? Well, it's actually really simple. All I discovered was that I needed to not just learn JavaScript concepts, but I also needed to learn how to connect all of those JavaScript concepts together. And that idea may sound really simple, really straightforward, especially if you're like, well, everybody tells me to build projects and that's how I learn. And yes, the idea of connecting things together is really straightforward and simple, but the actual way that I implemented that and the way that you should implement that is not nearly as straightforward as it seems. If it was as easy as it seems, then literally every single person would be a JavaScript developer, but clearly that's not the case, and clearly tons of people fail on their path to becoming a JavaScript developer because the single step is much trickier than it looks. And part of the problem is that there's really no courses or videos that teach this connecting of JavaScript in the right way. They either jump way too far into advanced topics, or they don't actually teach that connection aspect, and they're just missing that middle ground, and I haven't been able to find it anywhere. I was able to take this information about how to connect things inside of JavaScript and go from getting nearly fired at my first internship to having multiple high-paying job offers. And the thing that was best for me was that I went from having terrible imposter syndrome to feeling incredibly confident in my development skills all across the board, which to me was the best transformation of all. So let me jump back a little bit to that story of how I nearly got fired from my first internship because it's a pretty crazy story. It all started out pretty normal. I was in school taking classes in computer engineering, learning to be a computer engineer, but they didn't teach web development at all in school, so I had to learn that on my own outside. I watched tons of tutorials on YouTube, read blog articles, read documentation, all the things that you've probably tried yourself trying to learn JavaScript. But I still really couldn't build projects that well on my own, but I was able to land an internship pretty early on at a company doing web development. And I was like, wow, this is awesome. I don't know why they hired me because I really don't know that much about web development, but this is awesome. And they had this training program where they would teach you a little bit about, their own software as well as web development in general. And it's supposed to take about maybe 2-ish weeks, maybe 3 weeks if you're a little bit slower. And this took me a very, very long time. I think I was about 6 months for me to complete the entire training process. And as I was starting to get to month 4, 5, 6, my boss would constantly come to me and start asking me, like, why is this taking so long? Why is this so slow? Like, you should be done by now. I was seriously getting worried, like, am I going to get fired from my very first developer job within just a couple months of starting? I mean, that would be incredibly demoralizing. I already had pretty bad imposter syndrome that I didn't think my skills were good enough. Clearly, I was taking much longer than everyone else. If I got fired from that job as well, I don't even know if I would have been able to do web development after that because I would have been so demoralized in my abilities as a programmer that I just wouldn't feel confident ever trying web development again. But luckily, I started to kind of realize what my problem was and why I wasn't able to complete this training very quickly. And it's because I just couldn't build projects on my own. I could watch any tutorial there was, no matter how complex the tutorial was, and I could build that project, follow it through all the way, and I'd have the exact working version of the project by the time I was done with the tutorial. But if you told me to build just a simple to-do list on my own, I would just stare at this blank text editor in fear, not really knowing where to start, not knowing what to do, and I just felt stuck, unable to begin this project, let alone complete it. This inability to complete projects was really jeopardizing my abilities to do my job and also potentially leading to me getting fired. So, luckily, one night I was watching a YouTube tutorial, and that is when it hit me the reason I couldn't build projects. I was watching this tutorial and I was getting really bored actually with the tutorial. The person just kept explaining JavaScript concepts over and over again that I already knew, things like promises or async await or whatever it was. I was like, I already know this. Why are you explaining this to me? I just want you to show me how to build the project. But that was when I realized I knew all of the concepts that it took to build this project. Literally every single concept this person talked about, I knew, but I couldn't build the project. The problem was not my abilities or skills of knowing the pieces of JavaScript, but my problem was how to connect those pieces of JavaScript together. I had no idea how to do that. I could write out any individual concept of JavaScript on its own. As soon as you told me to connect those pieces together, I just froze. I didn't know what to do. I didn't know where to get started, and I just couldn't build projects on my own. So it was that night, that very night, I decided I was going to completely change how I learned JavaScript. Instead of focusing on learning tons of different JavaScript concepts, or instead of focusing on building really cool projects through tutorials, I was instead going to focus solely on being able to connect the pieces of JavaScript together. I realized that once I was able to do that, connect JavaScript together, I was able to build any project I could think of, not just the ones in the tutorials that I was watching. So I sat down and I spent all of my time focusing on purely connecting JavaScript pieces. And this started out very small. I was building things that were so small you couldn't even call them projects. They were just playgrounds of me testing, connecting different pieces of JavaScript together, figuring out how they worked, then slowly connecting more and more things together. The problem though was this is a very hard way to learn. There was really no resources out there that I could find that taught me how to connect these pieces of JavaScript together. Pretty much everything out there were these massive, large scale, really cool projects, and I got sucked into those super hard when I was first learning. I mean, I probably watched hundreds of those tutorials, but I never actually learned anything from them. And the problem is they sound really cool. I mean, if I told you today that I was going to teach you how to build Netflix, that sounds awesome. I would love to watch a video like that. And the temptation is super strong to watch a video like that. But the problem is, at the end of that video, did you actually learn anything? Sure, you have this really cool Netflix application, but did you actually learn what all the pieces mean? Did you learn how to connect all those pieces in ways that are not just for this single project, but apply to all projects out there? Chances are probably not. And for me, I definitely didn't learn any of these things. So I had to immediately change my learning technique and stop watching those large project-based tutorials and instead focus on finding ways to connect pieces of JavaScript. Like I said, this was very hard because there was nothing out there that really taught this to me. I pretty much had to create all my own learning techniques for this way of connecting the pieces of JavaScript, and it was very time consuming. I made tons of mistakes along the way, but for the first time ever, I was finally starting to really learn JavaScript. I could finally make my very own projects completely from scratch. I mean, they started out very small, but they were still projects on my own with no outside help, and this felt amazing. Immediately, I started to see improvements in my work experience. I was able to learn things quicker, implement projects quicker, and make it through the training even quicker. And best of all, my confidence in myself as a developer was at an all-time high. Just from the ability to make these small projects, it felt so good. And that confidence directly correlated to me becoming a better developer. I can definitely attribute where I am now to that one single technique. If I hadn't taken the risk to ditch the traditional learning path of JavaScript and take on this new path of learning how to connect the pieces of JavaScript, there is no way I would be where I am right now. I probably wouldn't even be a web developer. And I know that this story may not pertain 100% to you. Odds are you're probably not getting fired from an internship, at least I really hope not. But there's probably something in your life pressuring you to learn JavaScript. Maybe it's because you want a better life for your family, so you want to get a better, more secure job that's going to pay you better so you can support your family in a way that you want. Or maybe you just got fired from your previous job and you want to find a better, more secure, long-term, good-paying job. Maybe you just enjoy web development. And it doesn't matter what your pressure or reason for learning JavaScript is, there is one thing that always is going to hold true, and that is that the only way to learn JavaScript is to learn to connect the pieces of JavaScript together. So hopefully I've piqued your interest at least a little bit in how you can use this connection technique to learn JavaScript more effectively. But you're probably also a bit confused on how exactly to go about this technique. It's kind of vague, and like I said, there's not really a lot of resources out there that teach you this technique. So let me use a little bit of a metaphor to try to explain how this technique works and how you can apply it into your own life. This metaphor may sound a little bit controversial, but you just gotta hear me out here. Learning JavaScript is just like learning a foreign language. And I know that may sound crazy. I mean, a foreign language and a programming language are completely opposite from one another, but they actually share so many concepts when it comes to learning them. And the way people learn JavaScript traditionally is so wrong compared to how you would want to learn a foreign language. Just think about this real quick. When you're learning a foreign language, there's two main concepts that you need to learn. You need to learn all of the words in the foreign language that you're trying to understand and speak, and then you need to learn the grammar of that foreign language so that you can combine these words together into sentences, paragraphs, books, and so on. Programming languages like JavaScript are the exact same way. You need to learn all of the concepts and syntax of JavaScript. This would be like the words of a foreign language. And you also need to learn how to connect those different concepts together. This is like the grammar of a foreign language. So you need to learn not only the syntax and concepts of JavaScript, but also how to connect those concepts together. Because if you don't learn both of these, you cannot create projects. You can't connect concepts, you can't create projects. So why is it that in JavaScript, most people don't actually learn both of these different things, which allow them to create projects? Well, the problem is that the traditional way of teaching JavaScript is broken and doesn't teach you both of these concepts. And I'm talking about all of the traditional ways of learning JavaScript. They all contain major flaws. The first and probably most popular way people learn JavaScript is with project-based tutorials, which we've talked about pretty heavily so far. And these are completely flawed. And these can be anything. They can be just a single YouTube video, a series of YouTube videos, or even some massive 40-hour Udemy course that contains some massive cool big project. It really doesn't matter as long as at the end of everything, you're building out one massive big cool project. The problem with this is that you don't actually learn anything when you build this project. The person is just telling you what code to write. Maybe they explain a little bit here and there, but it's not enough to really learn how to connect things. Really, all they're doing is just telling you what to write, and you're writing it down. And at the end, you have a cool project, but you don't know how it works. You don't know the concepts inside of it. You don't know how they're connected. And really, all you can do is show off this one cool project, but you can't build anything on your own. This is the equivalent of you going to learn a foreign language, and every day that you go to class, the teacher just writes up on the board the exact words in the exact order you need to write them down, and by the end of the entire class, you have a book. But do you know what the words in that book mean? Do you know how to connect those words to make sentences and grammar? No, because they just told you the order to write each word and exactly what word to write. They literally told you what to do and didn't actually teach you why you're doing it. This is flawed in so many ways, though. I mean, not only are you not learning how to connect the pieces of JavaScript together, but you're not even learning the concepts and syntax of JavaScript because they're just telling you what to write and you don't actually need to understand why you're writing what you're writing. So this is flawed all over the place. And unfortunately, it's the most popular way people learn. Probably the second most popular way people learn is by watching concept-based videos or reading concept-based articles. So this would be like watching a video on promises, reading an article on let versus const, this kind of stuff, where it teaches you one single concept or syntax inside of JavaScript. This is already so much better because it's at least teaching you half of JavaScript. You're learning a concept or a syntax of JavaScript. But again, this is flawed because it's only half of JavaScript. This would be the equivalent of learning every single word in a foreign language, but no grammar. Sure, you know all the words in the foreign language, but you can't speak, you can't make sentences, you can't read, you can't do anything because you don't actually know how to connect those words together. Same thing with JavaScript. If you can't connect your concepts together, it doesn't matter because you can't actually create anything. Now, the final way that people try to learn JavaScript is by building projects on their own. And this sounds at first like a great idea. It'll teach you how to connect JavaScript and the concepts of JavaScript together by building your own projects. But this is actually really flawed. I mean, how many times has someone come up to you and been like, hey, You should just build a project on your own if you want to learn JavaScript, and then you go try to build a project and you fail because you can't do it. I've done that so many times myself, and I'm sure that you've been in the same position. And you probably think, well, maybe JavaScript isn't for me because this is how everyone else says to learn and it just doesn't work for me. That's wrong because this is again flawed. Why would you build a project to learn how to build projects? You're trying to do something to learn how to do something. You can't do it yet, but you're trying to do it to learn how to do it. This would be like going to a foreign language class on the very first day and the teacher just hands you a blank piece of paper and says, write me a book. You don't know the foreign language yet. You don't know the grammar of the foreign language. You don't know how to connect anything. Yet they tell you to write a book as your very first assignment. How in the world are you supposed to do that? That's a monumental task that you're never going to complete. That's the same thing with trying to build a project as your first task with JavaScript. It just doesn't make sense because you don't know enough to be able to build this project on your own. They're setting you up for failure from the very beginning. Instead, what you need to do, instead of using any of these traditional learning paths, is you need to learn how to connect the pieces of JavaScript. And you need to start small. Start by connecting just 2 concepts together. Then throw in a third concept, maybe a fourth concept, a fifth concept, a sixth concept, until finally you have a small project, a medium-sized project, a large project. That is how you learn JavaScript. It's the same way with learning a foreign language. You start by learning a few words. Then you take those words and combine them together in pairs, triplets, maybe even you finally get to full-on sentences. You learn a few more words, then you start writing out paragraphs, and then you learn a few more words, practice connecting them again, and now maybe you have an entire page. And you keep on doing this until eventually you have an entire book written. That is how you learn a foreign language, and that is also how you learn JavaScript. So now that you understand how you can connect the different pieces of JavaScript together and why it's so important, I need to address the giant elephant in the room, and that is you doubting yourself right now. I guarantee through your head right now you're probably thinking, that's great that it worked for you, Kyle, but it's not going to work for me. I'm not smart enough. I don't know enough math. I'm terrible at math. Or you have some other lame excuse that you're thinking of right now that's telling you, I can't do this because X, Y, or Z. You're wrong. The reason that I know you're wrong is because I thought the exact same thing before I started using this technique. I thought, you know what? Maybe development isn't for me. I'm not smart enough, or I'm not built to be a developer. My problem solving skills just aren't good enough. Other people are developers because they're smarter than me or better than me in some way. I mean, my imposter syndrome was huge. The problem was I was just learning JavaScript the wrong way, and so are you. All these times that you've failed building a project on your own, or you failed trying to do something in JavaScript, maybe even you fired from your first job, or you failed to land that interview, this isn't your fault. This is because you're using the wrong ways to learn JavaScript. Once I switched my mindset to learning about connecting the pieces of JavaScript together instead of just building these large, cool projects, I instantly had my confidence skyrocket. I can assure you that when I was building out these small things, connecting 1 or 2 concepts together, just console logging things out, you can't even call this a project. My confidence was so high compared to when I was building these massive Netflix clone style projects from tutorials. And it was all because I was finally able to create something on my own, something from scratch that came from my brain. I put into the computer and it looked just like I wanted it to. That is the ultimate confidence high that you can get. And I was only able to achieve that by learning how to connect the pieces of JavaScript together. And even though what I was doing was infinitely smaller than these massive projects, I felt so much more accomplished as a developer, and my ability and confidence in myself grew so much that imposter syndrome and self-doubt started to disappear and fade into the back. I started to realize that by following these techniques, I was able to build an infinite number of projects. Even if at the beginning these projects were small, they could create any project I could dream of because all I needed to do was connect the things together. And once I learned how to do that, it was easy to build any project I could think of. I realized that I don't need to be a math genius, a problem solving expert, some kind of 200 IQ expert. I just need to be a person that's using the right techniques. That's all it takes to become a JavaScript developer. So now I've taught you how to connect the pieces of JavaScript together. And I've also taught you that the self-doubt in your mind is false. It's just a figment of your imagination. None of that is true. You can become a JavaScript developer no matter what. But you're probably still thinking, well, Kyle, I'm really busy. I have a family. I got kids. I got a full-time job. I have to go to the gym. I don't have time to do this fancy JavaScript thing. You're wrong. I'm sorry, but you're completely wrong. You have the time because this technique is so much quicker than what you're currently doing. When I first tried to learn JavaScript, I spent years trying to learn JavaScript the traditional way, watching project-based tutorials, reading documentation, trying and failing to build projects on my own. And by the end of all of that time trying to build JavaScript, I nearly got fired from an internship and couldn't build projects on my own. I wasted all of that time doing something that didn't even work. When I switched over to this connecting the dots version of learning JavaScript, I was able to start building projects, albeit very small projects, within just a few weeks of switching over to this technique. A few weeks, and I was able to do more than I had in over a year of learning JavaScript the traditional way. So how could I possibly say I don't have time when I literally spent over a year doing things the wrong way, and it only took a couple weeks to fix all the issues that I had from over a year of learning? I could do more in just a couple weeks than I had in a year of this traditional way of learning JavaScript. So if you're learning JavaScript right now the traditional way, you are wasting time right now. So if you don't think you have enough time, you're constantly wasting time right now learning it the wrong way. And the best thing that you can do right now in order to learn JavaScript quicker is to start learning by connecting the dots of JavaScript. And best of all is you don't need to struggle like I did. I spent so long trying to build up the techniques and the concepts of how to connect the different pieces of JavaScript together because there was no resource out there teaching me how to do this. So I had to do it all from scratch on my own. I had to build up all these different teaching techniques, all these different learning techniques, and that was pretty time consuming. But still, in just a couple weeks, I was able to get where I needed to be. This is why I took all of that experience and learning that I took over those many times of trying to learn JavaScript, and I condensed it all down into the JavaScript Simplified course. And you may think, oh, a course, that's going to take forever to go through. This course, if you just spend an hour a day, that's it, 1 hour a day, you can get through everything you need to learn about JavaScript in a month. One single month, you can learn everything there is to learn about starting to build your projects on your own. So 1 month from now, you can be building projects on your own without getting stuck. I mean, I would love this if I had this back when I was learning because it took me much longer, I can assure you, since I had to compile all this information on my own. And even if you don't have an hour a day, do a half hour a day, do 15 minutes a day. It just might take you a little bit longer to get through all the content. But I can assure you, even if you only spend a little bit of time, you're going to start seeing results almost immediately upon taking this course. So now at this point, you probably have tons of thoughts racing through your head about how to connect the pieces of JavaScript together and what this means for you. I mean, are you excited for the potential of this? Are you a bit overwhelmed by the massive amount of information I've thrown at you? Probably definitely the second one, I can guarantee you, because I'm trying to cram as much information as I can into the shortest amount of time possible, but it's pretty much impossible for me to teach you everything there is about connecting these concepts of JavaScript. So if you don't mind, I would love to spend just a little bit of time to share with you this special offer I have for how you can become a JavaScript developer. So what exactly does this offer all include? Well, the very first thing that you're going to get is the JavaScript Simplified Beginner course. This is 13 hours of content, well, actually over 13 hours of content across 74 different videos and 10 different modules. This covers pretty much everything there is to know about JavaScript that you need to know in order to become a proficient JavaScript developer. This doesn't matter if you're an absolute beginner and you don't know anything about JavaScript, or if you have some experience but are struggling to create JavaScript projects. This is perfect for you. And it covers everything. Everything from creating a variable in JavaScript all the way to more advanced concepts like async await, the event loop, and so on. On top of that, this course includes tons of exercises. I mean, these exercises in pretty much every video of the course and scattered between videos is just filled with exercises to help you learn how to connect the pieces of JavaScript. This is so valuable. This is the stuff that took me months and months to learn and compile down into this one single course for you. And I've even been able to give early access to a few people to this course, and they are loving it. They've all come back to me praising it and telling me how thankful they are that they're able to finally start building projects on their own in ways they weren't able to do just weeks before taking this course. It's amazing being able to see the progress that they're making. And best of all is these people aren't special. They're not some crazy geniuses. These are just normal people, just like you, just like me, that are able to take themselves and become JavaScript developers by learning how to connect the pieces of JavaScript. And this is so valuable. I mean, this course alone, with the amount of knowledge it provides you, is easily worth something like $300 because of how quickly it'll turn you into a JavaScript developer. But that's not even close to all there is in this bundle. On top of that, you're going to be getting the JavaScript Simplified Advanced course. This course is essentially the perfect continuation from the beginner course that takes you from a JavaScript developer that understands how to program in JavaScript and understands how to build projects on your own, and takes you all the way to learning the things such as security, testing, best practices, clean coding, and some advanced JavaScript features. These are things that most people don't even learn until they get their first job and they learn them on the job. And you're going to know them before you even start your first job. It just puts you miles ahead of everyone else competing for a job. And best of all is it helps you transition from junior level developer to mid-level developer so much quicker, because these are the skills that a mid-level developer understands that most junior developers don't actually get. And right now, I'm currently in development on this course. I'm planning it out, building out, recording videos to try to make it the best it can possibly be for you. So normally this would be something that's worth at least a few $100s. Let's just say that it's somewhere around $250 of value for this one course since it's in early access and not fully released yet. Now, on top of both of these courses, you're also going to be getting access to a full private community of people in the JavaScript Simplified course. And this is invaluable. Having the ability to have access to not only me, but other members of the community when you have questions, need help, get stuck, or just want to talk with other people at the same experience level as you, that value is just so high. And most communities like that are going to charge you anywhere from $10 to $20 to be a part of that community. And as soon as you stop paying, they kick you out and they say, well, too bad, you're gone. But with this, you get lifetime access to this community. So you can always talk to people that are at that same experience level as you, get help, and do whatever you need to do inside of the community. Not only that, but these types of communities are great for holding you accountable because you're not the only one taking the course. Everyone else in that community is also taking the course. So you have that pressure of being just like everyone else to try to complete the course and get through it together as a whole instead of failing on your own. If you get into a rough spot or a struggle, you can always fall back on the group and try to get through everything together. And this type of community, let's say that you would stay in it for something like 1 to 2 years. That could be anywhere from, 240 all the way up to nearly $500 just to be in that community, which is crazy because with this course, you're going to get into that for a lifetime access. Now, if you add all this together, that comes to over $1,000 in value. There's no way I'm going to charge you $1,000 for this course because I want to help as many people reach their dream of becoming a JavaScript developer. And that includes you. I want you to become a JavaScript developer. Let's just think for a moment. What if I did charge $1,000 for this course? Would it still be worth it? And let's just assume that the course only taught you how to become a JavaScript developer and learn how to build projects without getting stuck. So if I charged you $1,000 to learn how to build projects without getting stuck in JavaScript, would that be worth it? To me, that is a huge yes. I mean, I can make way more than $1,000 as a full-time JavaScript developer, so being able to get there quicker is definitely worth that to me. Okay, but let's say it didn't do that. Let's say that the only thing this course did was cure your imposter syndrome. So if I charged $1,000 for a course that could cure your imposter syndrome, would that be worth it to you? Again, for me, that's a huge yes. Because one of the main reasons I was able to land my very first full-time web developer job was because I had this high level of confidence in myself, and that was very apparent to the interviewer, and they liked that, and that led to me getting multiple job offers for my very first job. So definitely, hands down worth it for me because it would have led me to become a web developer even more. To me, this course is worth so much more than $1,000 because it's an investment in yourself and your future and your ability to become a JavaScript developer. But there's no way I'm going to charge you that much for this course. I want to make this as accessible as possible. And when I was creating this course and pricing it, I realized that I had two choices to make about this pricing. Number one is I could go the Udemy route. I could make this course dirt cheap and try to sell it to as many people as possible. But the problem with that is I wouldn't be able to pack nearly as much information into this course. Sure, I could make a course for $10, sell it on Udemy, and I could put in a bunch of information about the concepts of JavaScript. But you can get all of that for free anyway. I mean, you don't even need to buy a course for that. And even if you do, learning the concepts is not enough to learn how to become a JavaScript developer. I wanted to throw in all of this extra value, throw in the entire advanced course, the community, and most importantly, all of those exercises and projects and tactics you need to learn in order to connect the pieces of JavaScript. And those are incredibly time consuming to create. So if I wanted to go that $10 route, there's no way I could put all that extra information inside of there. So I decided I was going to go with a slightly more expensive course. That way, I could give you the skills that you need to be successful. It's much more important to me that you're able to successfully learn JavaScript and become a JavaScript developer so you can start making a salary as a JavaScript developer. So you've already seen how this course is easily worth that $1,000 price tag, but like I said, I'm not going to charge you nearly that much. I'm going to be charging you only $147 for this course, and you're going to get everything: the community, the advanced course, the beginner course, all the skills you need to become a JavaScript developer. And I have a link down in the description of this live stream that'll bring you directly to the course page. Now, I understand this numbers may seem a bit high still, but you have to weigh the cost of what you're going to be missing out on if you don't take this course. Let's say, for example, that you go the traditional path of learning JavaScript, and you take a few years, but eventually you somehow learn enough JavaScript through this traditional means that you land your first full-time job as a web developer, and you're making $50,000 a year, which is a little bit low end on the starting developer salary, at least here in the US. Now, let's say that you instead spend $147 on this course, and you were able to fast track that to learning enough about JavaScript in order to land a job within just a few months. Maybe within 3-4 months of taking this course, you landed your first job. Well, you just cut years off of the time it took you to become a developer. So not only are you going to be happier because you're a developer sooner, but you're also going to be making that $50,000 per year so much sooner. Let's say you got there 2 years sooner. It's $100,000 that you just made that you wouldn't have if it took you that extra, 2 years to become a developer because you went through the traditional path, which was just a bit slower and didn't really work very well. And that's best case scenario for the traditional path. Odds are in the traditional path is that you're going to get into some struggles, you're going to get some hardship along the way, you're going to get discouraged over the course of 2 years, and maybe you're not going to want to continue along with that traditional path. This is why I want to give this path to you as cheaply as possible. And for only $147, if you can become a developer, even just a few hours sooner than you were if you didn't take this course, it'll pay for itself immediately. Because within one day of working as a developer, you'll make more than $147. But now you're probably thinking, but Kyle, what if this doesn't work for me? What if I don't learn JavaScript this way? First of all, I'd be a little bit surprised because learning how to connect the pieces of JavaScript is the only way to learn JavaScript. Let's just say that you didn't jive very well with my teaching technique, you didn't like the course, and you didn't feel like you got value out of it. Absolutely no worries. I have a 100% refund policy. All you have to do is email me, let me know that you didn't enjoy the course, you didn't learn things that you wanted to, or you didn't really jive with my teaching technique. I'll refund the entire course to you. You literally have nothing to lose with this course. Even if this course only did half of what I'm claiming it can do, it would easily be worth the price because you'd be able to become a JavaScript developer sooner, you'd be able to start making more money, and within just a few hours of landing your first job as a JavaScript developer, you would already pay for the course multiple times over. So if you're interested, I highly recommend you check this out down in the description below for a link to the course.